Hi guys, today I will introduce you to 4 of my favorite fantasy books. Why do I like them so much? What's not to like? Let's start. The first is the beginning of the series by James P. Blaylock in the Balloon series. The first one is called The Elfin Ship. Philip Dick wrote about this book. A magical world, magically presented. Having journeyed there, you will not wish to leave, nor ever to forget. It's basically, if you don't know Blaylock, he writes very funny, unusual books about special characters, about just people that are not sort of part of the regular world. They're cranks, oddballs, just generally funny. They have a lot of interests. Usually they like literature, they like science. This is a series that he wrote when he tried to write his own version of Lord of the Rings series, and he was having problems selling this book because, especially the third one in the series, because the publisher just couldn't understand what he was trying to say in the books. So this is very unusual sort of world. It's about a master cheeser. It's basically a guy who makes cheeses, who has to travel down the river with his load of cheeses, his dog, and his friends, and he gets basically beset by a bunch of goblins and by their master, evil magician, evil dwarf magician. So this is something like, if you remember Labyrinth, the movie, a bunch of trolls just throwing their heads in there and just being crazy. So this is what the trolls in the book look like, basically, and it's just really funny. It's a bunch of guys, sort of, it's his homage to Watership Down. It's a bunch of guys just swimming down the river, having a good time, smoking pipes, eating a lot, drinking, and just having fun. And all the dangers are not really dangers. It's just funny book. The next one, I remember picking up at the bookstore. This is probably the 5th edition of this book that I own. I just like to have it in perfect condition. You can see it's in excellent condition. I just recently bought another copy, and I've read this book maybe 20 times. It's about private detective, sort of Philip Marlowe type, Humphrey Bogart type, in our New York on Christmas Eve, who gets basically hired by an elf to find a stolen unicorn. And it's also the funniest book. Here you see this detective standing there with a cat girl, the unicorn, and the elf. And the back of the book is basically reads, "It's a New Year's Eve, an elf perched on Mallory's desk wants his missing unicorn back." And that's the easy part. And basically he enters alternate New York on Christmas Eve, full of nasty gnomes and mischievous felines, not to mention rampaging elephants charging down Fifth Avenue. He discovers that the malevolent demon Grundy also seeks the fabled beast. Mallory is no Philip Marlowe, and he will have to do some pretty fancy footwork just to stay alive. For if the Grundy wins, not only Mallory's life, but his world will be forfeit. Really highly recommended. The next one, I don't know if a lot of people know this. This is an epic fantasy series by Tom Arden. It's a book of the Oricon. I think there are 5 books in the series. I read all 5 of them. It's kind of difficult to explain. Every book is written in a different genre of fantasy. There is a sort of Regency, romance type fantasy. There is a there is Arabian Nights type fantasy. There is something basically like grim dark fantasy. It's really interesting, and it's the idea is sort of traditional, but the way it's executed is amazing. It's this talisman that's broken into multiple pieces, and in every book the main character has to find a piece of it. and there are different dangers, and it's just amazing. It's written so well. Unfortunately, the writer of this book died years ago. He just wrote these 5 books, and that's it. So it came out only in the UK. It did not come out in the US, and but it's still really easy to buy on Amazon used copies. It also came out in hardcover. I have hardcovers and paperbacks of this book. Harlequin's Dance. Yeah, he's looking for 5 crystals of the Oricon. But he's not only the seeker, he's not the only seeker. The evil sorcerer has his own plans and will let no one stand in his way. You can see the review from Interzone. Arden develops his tale skillfully. He has a fine eye for the grotesque and the wit to expose it. Together they contribute an edge of hysteria to the sense of mounting foreboding. And the last book I wanted to talk about is James P. Blaylock, Land of Dreams, maybe one of my favorite books of all time. You can see what they say here in the book. Not since Ray Bradbury has a writer created a world so fantastic and magically real. It's his version of a sort of magical California. If you read his short story Paper Dragons, it's very similar to that. Maybe even the same characters are in both of these stories. It's about the boy and sort of an orphan. He's friends with other orphan kids and who live in an orphanage, and there are just magical adventures happening. It's much better than Harry Potter, in my opinion. So you can see the 12-year solstice has come with it a sinister carnival, which is, again, just like Ray Bradbury's Dark Carnival. It brings new sense of terror and wonder to a small California town. Enormous shoe is washed up on shore. Tiny man disguises himself as a mouse. Crow provides eye for blind innkeeper, and 3 curious adventurers discover the gateway to the land of dreams. And any book with a quote from Tim Powers that says powerful, magical, suspenseful, and funny, destined to be one of the field's classics, is okay by me. And by the way, James P. Blaylock and Tim Powers are friends, and they reference the same characters in some of their books. And in my opinion, some of their writing is sort of related. Especially their steampunk novels. I think you should read both of them. And in one of the videos, I'll talk about my Tim Powers collection as well. So these 4 books are highly recommended. Thanks. Please subscribe and come back and like my videos. Bye, guys.